Okay, all right. Well, I'll get started then. Just mindful of everybody's time so that we're not sort of going over time. So for those people that don't know me, I'm Jo Fuller and I'm the Senior Manager of Product Development Support, and my team, who you can see on the screen, are here to support this particular information session. Can I just, before we sort of do all of the introductions, I'd just like to acknowledge that we're acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are meeting today, and I'd like to pay my respect to elders both past and present, and any First Nations people here today. Welcome everybody. It's great to see you all, and thank you, the IEC Skills Point, for inviting us along to this session. I think this is a culmination of an extensive piece of work that we've been processing. We've to the point that the assessment templates are actually now available, and this is the opportunity to showcase the templates and also to, I suppose, demonstrate where they're all located and how they're all going to be stored. So I thought what might be, and we're trying to do this session in about 15 minutes so that we can give you an opportunity to ask questions in the last 15 minutes, if that's okay. This will be the first of I suppose, a support that we're providing you. We'll also be providing the sessions on design and develop assessment tools. That will be done by 2 half-day workshops, and a bit more information will come through about that, because we want to acknowledge particularly that it's not just about the assessment templates, although they're really important and they need to be there and they need to be, I suppose, easy to use, and also for you to actually be able to store them, get them approved, all of those sorts of things. We also acknowledge that the most important thing is obviously the information that needs to go into the templates. So that's why we're planning the next lot of workshops after today. So it might be good if we could just quickly go around the room out there at Mount Druitt, if that's okay, just so that everybody knows who's on. Thank you.
Sure. I'm Chavi Shaw, Product Manager Civil.
Catherine Jagger, Resource Development Coordinator for General Construction.
Rick Bell, Product Manager for General Construction.
Ben Burke, Industry Relationship Lead, Electro and Energy.
Andrew O'Connell, Product Manager for Electro Technology.
Chris Pricey, Head of Skills Point.
Rod Jackson, Industry Relationship Lead, General Construction Plumbing.
John Smith, Product Manager for Property and Public Safety.
Rhonda Eadie, Production Development Coordinator for Property Services.
Okay, that's great. So welcome everybody. Online from my team is the 3 assessment designers, which is Alison, Dave and Lucia. And then there's also one of the Learning Bank officers, which is John, who you can see, John Argall. He's there to talk about the Learning Bank. And then I'm very pleased to welcome Nicole Walker, who's our Cultural Customisation Officer as well. So without further ado, I'll just hand it over to the team to take you through the session.
Thanks very much. Just present the screen.
Okay. Are we right? Yep. They must have thought I was going to keep talking because I have that tendency. Oh, here we go. There we go. All right, I'll leave it to you now. Thank you.
Thanks very much. So welcome everybody to the information session. Just to start off with in this session, what we're going to cover is, can you actually see that, or that has not come up? Oh yes, okay, let's start. What we're going to be covering in the session is what is in the assessment templates in the current version that will be released today, where to find the assessment templates, how to save your draft, how to store your final assessments, and also the file names and acronyms that are used. So we've updated the document that houses all that information and what to be aware of when using the data. So the assessment templates, which we're calling them version 3, as you'll see, they're on the right-hand side, and you're probably familiar with those. They'll be released today. So by the end of the day, at the very latest tomorrow morning, they will all be available for you on Equella. So just finalising getting them up there. So as you can see that there is the mapping documents, and each one of those assessment template suite has a support document. The support documents were designed to offer assistance in completing the templates, and they come with each one of those, and in there you'll find hints and tips on how to complete the document. We've put in there some assessment methods that you can use depending on the assessment that you are constructing, and it's very much for development of the student assessment. There's also a marking guide attached with each one of the assessments, and the marking guide is for the use of the trainer and assessor. With the marking guide, it really should be a duplicate of the student assessment, and within it should house your sample responses, your model answers to the assessments. The templates come in two forms. So they come in Word documents, which will be on the Learning Bank, and they will also be sitting in the data docs from the data website. So with the assessment templates, this is Aquila, which you may be familiar with, and that's where you would find the template. So this will be the front screen that you go into. We've provided a link as well, so we'll be making the PowerPoint available for you in a day or so, and you'll be able to access all the templates on Aquila within here. With the Learning Bank and the data, it's best accessed through Google Chrome or Safari, as they're they encounter less errors than if you're using the Internet Explorer. With the data docs, as you can see there on the screen, within that you'll see at the very bottom there that the documents are there sitting there as well. So all the templates that will be on the Learning Bank will also be in the data website for you to access. So with the data, the way that it works is you put in your code, your qualification, and then you select the template that you require, and it'll populate the information for you. I'll pass over to John now.
Thanks, Lucia. With regards to the documents that you are creating, whether it be the assessment templates that are currently being made available or any of the teaching and learning resources that you are creating, as Lucia mentioned, there is a specific naming convention for all of those documents. Those naming conventions assist us in the Learning Bank to be able to place the resources in the correct locations. So in the teaching and learning resources for that type of record, and in the assessment section, there's two sections. One is the section for students to student-facing documents, and the other one is for teacher-facing documents, which would be the marking guides and assessor instructions, those types of things. The naming convention, also our metadata form, those are all available in the Project 83 site. The metadata form itself is available in folder 2, which has your product development templates in it. And the quality assure and approve process, which is what needs to occur before we at the Learning Bank receive any of your resources, is also available in that space. The quality assure and approve process is probably the most important aspect for us at the Learning Bank, because without that process being completed and acknowledged in the unit metadata form, we're not able to make your resources and the resource record live on the Learning Bank. The guidelines for the naming convention are also available in that space, and the different folders are titled accordingly. So the guidelines would contain the guidelines for the naming conventions. There's also work instructions for the metadata form available in that space, and a pre-recorded session that we did that contains information about how to complete the metadata form itself. And if you do have any questions, or when you do submit resources to us at the Learning Bank, if you could do it via the Learning Bank at TAFE NSW email address, that way we can keep track of what communications we have with the different people here at the Learning Bank itself. Thank you.
Thanks, John. So with the data, we've actually done some testing. So when you're actually using the data from TGA, please check every document to ensure that the information has been extracted. So in particular, the mapping documents, we found that when you're extracting information from TGA, there were some instances where the foundation skills, in particular, not all the information came across. So we've added in there some information, the link where you can actually lodge an issue if that is the case with any of that happening, and then the IT guys will be able to fix it. But in most instances, it populated across, but just a good rule of thumb, just to double check your document. The versions that you should be using would, as I said, these are being released at the end of the day today, and they will be ready for you to use. If you are starting new courses and part of the Project 03, then obviously, we suggest that you'll be using these. But if you're already in the midst of, developing and you've already used the other templates, they will be up on the website a little bit longer, till at least mid-September, so they're still available there for you to use. So, what we're asking is obviously consistency throughout. So not that you have a qualification with part templates of one and part of the other. And as you mentioned before, the guidelines for the training product naming convention, we've updated that to reflect the end-to-end process, so that way there is consistency throughout, from your learning resources to your assessment templates, your tags. It has information on what to put in your footers. We've also added a little bit on clustering, if you had clustered units, and how you would file those. So it is fairly comprehensive, and we have all the codes of the assessment. So please refer to that when naming your files, and that's really all from us. If there's any questions.
Yeah. John, on your presentation there, I think you were telling us about what do we do with the draft assessments? Are we saving them on Learning Bank? Where are we storing them? Is it on?
Yeah, no. Any draft assessments, the only records and resources that we receive at the Learning Bank are anything that has been through the quality assure and approved process. So I don't believe a draft assessment would go through that process to be uploaded to the Learning Bank. If you have a look in your product development SharePoint space, under each unit of competency, there's a file structure. I think that the first one is design, the second is develop, and the third is transfer. So once you've completed your development of resources and they have gone through the quality assure and approved process, they should be moved into that 03 transfer folder. And that location is what we require in the metadata form to be able to get the resources and upload them into the Learning Bank itself. But yeah, anything that's in draft, we wouldn't have it. We wouldn't have a copy and are not required to have it in the Learning Bank itself.
Sounds good. Thanks, John.
Okay, you're welcome.
Just another question: have the RPL toolkits templates been released as well with this suite? Or?
So I might just take that question. Thanks, Shelly. So obviously the focus has actually been to finalise these assessments, and I'll just remind everybody that we're not just doing this development for Skills Point, that's also for across TAFE New South Wales. So it's with the regions who have to develop assessments going forward for all of the courses that are not in the Project 83 Project 83 project. Doesn't even make sense, but anyway, so what we have to do information sessions for those in the coming weeks, and whilst we're doing that, our focus will then go to the RPL kits. They're fairly close to being available for feedback, but we will be, it'll be the next step. So we'll probably in the next week or two that's when we'll be able to release the RPL kits.
Sure, Joe. Thank you.
Can I ask, on the assessment templates, are we still required to put the course code and number? So the, say, Cert 3 Carpentry and the code, rather than just the unit title?
In the course qualification course guide, and you'll notice that we've called it qualification course guide because there is one of the school points that uses courses and not so much qualifications. So in your assessment templates, you would be putting in your unit code for that and also the qualification that it falls within. Now, for the student-facing document, it'll be the qualification, obviously, that the student is enrolled in, and for the teacher-facing document, if that unit falls in other qualifications, then listing them all on the teacher and assessor marking guide is where you would list them.
So can I list both of them on the student version as well?
Both of the qualifications?
Yeah.
Well, no, because the student would only be enrolled in one course.
So then I've got to have two versions of an identical assessment, which risks one not having updates made to it when the other one does.
And there will also be cohorts that have the two different courses in the same group who are doing the same assessment at the same time, which makes it a lot more problematic for the teachers.
As I mentioned, I understand that, the unit may fall into both qualifications, but for the student-facing document, it really should be the what the student is enrolled in. In the teacher-facing documents, then you can list both, and the idea would be that that would give you the prompt to say, well, this is where it sits, and this is what we need to change.
Okay, because I guess, Lucia, what my team's trying to allude to is we've got units that sit across like 20 qualifications.
Yes.
So we need to have so in the naming conventions, there's scope for us to be able to have 20 different versions of the one assessment. Doesn't go in there.
Can I speak to that? The way that the Learning Bank is being developed, there will be if you develop let's say an assessment that is possible to be used across, or I'll start at the unit level. If you develop a unit that can be used in multiple qualifications, then that one unit will be the original version of that qualification. If you can utilize resources from within that unit, then what we will ask you to do is to point to that resource in the Learning Bank when you develop different courses, so that there is always only one copy of, for example, in your case, an assessment that can be utilized in multiple units. Your question, I think, is specifically in relation to the naming convention within those documents, and perhaps that's something that we may need to look at to accommodate that possibility. But I believe that from the format that we're going to be using within the Learning Bank, if a resource can be used in multiple qualifications, which would then become multiple records within our Learning Bank space, we would require you to link to that original resource from all of those other qualifications or units, if that's clear.
So could I create my assessment, leave the qualification code and name blank on the student version,
mm-hmm.
and then the delivering teaching section fill it in depending on which qualification they're delivering?
Yeah, I guess that's one way to solve it, because they would be looking at the qualification with the link to the assessment. So hopefully they would recognize that there isn't that information in the assessment itself and could add it in for themselves. That's one way to resolve it. Perhaps in the assessment when it's developed, that could be highlighted so that the teacher will see that they need to enter the qualification that that assessment is referring to. So at the unit level, it would be the unit assessment, and at the qualification level, they could add in their own, the actual qualification that needs to be added there.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
A question for you, Joe. Will the master TAS sit in that same location in Aquila, available for download? It's not the completed one, the template, sorry.
The template. Okay, so that is a focus of discussion today. There was many discussions about where that will be. It will be. That's where it will be sitting, the template. It's just we've got to work out how our region's going to use it, that's all. So there's going to be a bit of work and there'll be some information around that. So the short answer, yes, that's where it will be available because we're putting all the templates into the one collection, but we just have to work out with the delivery and implementation and performance teams how they'll be utilised.
Okay, thank you. Jo, can I just raise an issue? And I know you're aware of this, but I think I described it earlier today as difference in maturity of relationships between the hosts and the HODIP teams. Please, if you're going to socialise these templates, can the hosts and their team leaders be involved, not just the HODIP teams? Because I know the HODIP teams may be responsible for the implementation, but it's the hosts and their teams who are actually going to be writing the assessments.
Okay, so just to sort of take that feedback on board then, so maybe there's two levels that we need to do there because, you know, obviously we don't have a direct link to the hosts like the skills points have the direct link, but maybe I can talk with you about how we link in the heads of skills teams because we're probably going to be doing a session like this with the actual delivery, implementation and performance teams just to talk to them about where everything will be and where everything's available. But maybe we need to do a follow-up and maybe I'll get the skills points as well as the delivery and implementation teams to just talk about how are you going to sort of manage that, how are you going to manage your assessments and where are you going to put them. It's probably a larger conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Jo.
Lucia, these are the templates we've been reviewing for the last 4 weeks, aren't they?
That's correct.
Now, at one stage, I'm pretty sure these templates were referred to as version 4. So has that been looked at and changed? Because they're obviously being identified here as version 3. That's the first question. The second question is that there was a lot of feedback that you received from a lot of different areas. And we had an email to say that some of the changes would be made, but others would be considered continuous improvement. So what level of change has occurred in the template since we saw them last? Because some of them were did require a little bit of work. And should we review them in conjunction with our changes that we put through over the weeks?
Okay, so in answer to your first question about the version, with the current templates that are sitting on the compliance website in the intranet, we believe that they're version 2, and I suppose that they were the ones that were made public. So we've decided to call these version 3 because we felt that since they were the ones that weren't made public, weren't aware that there was so these will be the version 3 that are made public again. So the 4, I don't know which ones the 4 were, the other version 3 that you mentioned before, which ones they were, because as far as we're aware, the ones on the intranet are 2, and these ones here that we've published would be 3.
And if I can just comment on that too, it was just a decision had to be made because they're going to be released to the regions as well. And everyone would say, well, where's version 3? I haven't seen version 3. So, I haven't seen what version 3 is if we make these version 4. So we just took a decision there that was probably the easiest. So there is no version 4, there's only version 3.
Thank you.
Jo, just wondering whether there's a possibility of working with ICT to set up an alert system so that when changes do occur, those that want to register can be advised that templates have changed?
Yeah, I think it's a good point, Chris, and we're working to try and streamline that as best we can. It's probably where we are right now, but that's certainly the vision for the future, absolutely.
I know John might want to, I know that for example, the Learning Bank does have a capability to update. John, you might want to speak to that when new versions come out.
Yes, so what's available currently through SharePoint is if you choose to follow a SharePoint site, for example, the Project 83 space, if new templates become available in that space, you will receive a notification from the site itself to say that there have been changes made to the site, and also will indicate what has been updated in the space. The SharePoint sites also have a bit of a news feed to the left-hand side of where the column structure, the folder structures are. So that's one way currently available for at least the SharePoint or Project 83 space to be updated and for you to receive notifications of that. With regards to the Learning Bank, that's probably something that we'll discuss and see if there is a way to implement that so that at least from my understanding, the Skills Points team, so the product development coordinators and managers, are in our system and in a group. So it might be possible to have that group sent an email each time the templates are updated that are relevant to the work that you're doing. So that's something we can take on board and try and get some kind of a solution for.
Yeah, thanks, John. I'm actually thinking of teaching sections. So the end users being able to, subscribe to Cert 3 Carpentry so that whenever anything changes in that qual, they're sent an alert.
Would that be the record for that qualification in the Learning Bank? Is that what you're wanting to get them receive some kind of an update on?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, there. I'd have to find out if there is a way to do that, because that is a lot more complex than simply the groups that we currently have in the Learning Bank for the skills points. So yeah, that's something we can definitely take on board and see if there's a solution we can find.
Thank you.
Okay.
And of course, yeah, thanks, John. And of course, if we've got them in Moodle, the link will automatically update when the new version is. So we know that people will get the latest version, but it still doesn't answer how we communicate that. People will just go in one day and the link would have been changed. So we have to work on that communication plan. Lucia, I'm just wondering if you wanted to just talk about the changes that would be made and about, I suppose, going forward with the continuous improvement. So anything that we did gather for the feedback, because thank you everybody, it was really quite extensive, all the feedback, and we certainly asked the regions for feedback as well. So we got feedback from right across the board, but what we've got to do now is work out, is there some sort of, I suppose, how do we do this so that everybody knows that, oh, okay, we're going to do a feedback session, we're going to get more input, and we do that sort of maybe August, September, so that they can be released about the same time, so that we've got this cycle going that everybody's aware of. But we've certainly had to close it off where we are. But Lucia, I don't know if you want to make any more in-depth comments about that.
Yes, thank you, Joe. So going back to the question of feedback, so yes, we did receive quite a lot of feedback, and of course in determining what we could implement now and what we would look at a later stage. So we looked at, I suppose, common themes and things that did make sense that we would implement now. Obviously, with every tool, there's always continuous improvement. So the feedback that you have provided, if you find that it hasn't been implemented at this stage, it hasn't been lost. We have definitely kept that. And in using the tool and testing the tool, then in the next couple of months, there will be, I'm sure, possible reviews or maybe things that need to be fixed, but we are looking at a continuous cycle, and possibly within between now and the next 6 months, when there's been some really good traction on the assessment templates, we'll go back and have a look at where we can make further improvements, where we can adjust certain things, and we'll definitely take the remainder of that on board. So when we did have a look at that, we'd also had a look at, there was a lot of comments which were around possible capability development that for the future of the templates, possibly even getting to a point where we could automate them even more. So there are some processes moving forward, but as Joe mentioned, we had to sort of get to a stage where we actually release them, and I suppose there's no better way to actually test the tool and use it to then be able to make further improvements. But the feedback that already has been gathered will definitely be used for future improvements in the future.
Yes, and we have to be careful that we're not changing them, really quickly, because, we have to really it's probably more now about the process and how we'll go about it to make sure that we do get feedback and we feed it in, because we just, we can't be changing templates every couple of months. We've got to try and, really sort of bed it down, see if it's, obviously if there's something that's really not working, we'll consider it. But at this point, we'll probably carry over a lot of the feedback if that hasn't been acted upon. And there's probably a range of reasons, and I'm sure Lucia would be happy to take any sort of, conversation if you wanted to give her a call and be specific about the feedback if you wanted to.
Thanks, Jo. Can I just assume then that the simple changes, which are, the wrong tense being used in the wrong document, so for example, in a marking guide, it was still referring to the student or still speaking to the student. So those kind of things would be, I think, critical changes that need to be done straight away, and the rest would be nice to have as part of the continuous improvement process.
Yes, that's right. What we have done is that I suppose at the time when we did send them out for feedback, where we try to make sure that everything was okay and right. What the feedback that has come through, we have actually fixed those particular things, so tenses and capital letters and so forth. But again, as Jo mentioned, if there's anything that is definitely not working and they need to be fixed immediately, we'll then absolutely come back to me. Or you also have the ETS assessment review, where with feeding through your feedback, please go through that email address and send through those feedback, and we will definitely look at that. But we have tried exactly what you mentioned to ensure that we've incorporated all that. So I think we're pretty confident that we have. But if we miss one, please let me know. I'm happy to adjust that one.
Perfect. Thanks, Lucia.
You're welcome.
Okay, so I'm just a bit mindful of the time. We wanted to make it short and sharp, and just, obviously Lucia is your, I suppose, point of contact for IEC. So if you do have any further feedback, please contact her. But I'd just like to thank you for coming today and providing us an opportunity just to sort of talk through the process.
Thank you, Jo.
Thanks, Jo.
Thank you.